Hi, the video you're about to see is part of the pipe and verse segment of Perkins Pipes. It's just that it was recorded before I started this segment. So for this video, it doesn't have the usual introduction, but this is part of pipe and verse. Welcome back to Perkins Pipes. Got one of the pipes that I made some time back, a little bent brandy. Really enjoyed this guy. Hadn't had him out for a while, so I thought I'd bring this guy out. Got some of the Peterson early morning pipe in here, and a topic that's been on my list for quite some time to talk about. Very excited to finally get around to this one. So let's get this guy lit. Let's get to talking. So, want to talk about an epic, and that's part of the reason I'm wearing the Star Wars shirt here. Star Wars, of course, is epic film. I want to talk about a literary epic. I want to talk about Dante's Divine Comedy. Now, I'm curious if any of you have read any of the Divine Comedy. You say, well, I've never heard of the Divine Comedy. You probably have. You've probably heard of Dante's Inferno. If you're going, oh, yeah, I heard of that. Well, Dante's Inferno is simply the first part of the overall work called the Divine Comedy. And the whole thing is one grand epic poem, really, in 3 books, each of which is divided into cantos. Now, you think about the Iliad and the Odyssey and the Aeneid from the ancient world. You think about Milton and Paradise Lost. These epics, their divisions were in books, okay, and which really would be more like chapters of a modern novel. You've got Alexander Pope's mock epic, The Rape of the Lock. That was also divided into cantos, and that's what Dante did with his Divine Comedy. And the 3 parts are the Inferno in Italian, the Purgatorio, and then the Paradiso, or basically the Inferno. We still use that word in English. Then Purgatory, and then Paradise. Okay. So chances are you may have read some of the Inferno, possibly in high school, possibly in college. And I'll say it's sad that a lot of people have not read the entire thing. And everybody gets all geeked up on the exquisite tortures of people in hell, which is what you see in the Inferno. And just like, a action-adventure movie, lots of blood and guts, lots of shoot-'em-up stuff. Yeah, people really go for that, right? And so that's why that one is still probably, it's no question, the most popular of the 3. And the storyline is that Dante is the main character. He's the author, but he's the main character of this story. And it starts off where he awakened, he kind of has this vision, this dream, if you will, he says midway through life's allotted 60 years and 10. Well, if you think about 60 plus 10, 70, so halfway through, midway through, at age 35. He has this vision of being led into the underworld, or into hell, by none other than the classic Latin poet Virgil. And certainly Dante is, he owes a great debt of gratitude to Virgil as a poet. In fact, there's a wonderful book called Real Presences by George Steiner. Steiner was absolutely a polymath, literary commentator and scholar, University of Chicago. And one of the things that he says about secondary scholarship, all the articles and things that professors, people write about great literature, he says, sometimes there's too much of that stuff, right? He says, you go back to the original source and then you read the things that have been inspired by those sources. He says, so for example, he says the best commentator on Virgil is not all these other commentators out here. He says, best commentator on Virgil is Dante, because Dante picked up that mantle of epic poetry, took it somewhere else, took it in a different direction. But clearly inspired by Virgil. Okay, so the character Dante is led by the character of Virgil through hell. And that's where we get the 9 rings, and the deeper down you go, the greater the tortures, because the greater the sins, and all that sort of thing. Then, in the second book, the Purgatorio, or the Purgatory, he's led by the one of the greatest figures of Roman antiquity, Cato. Cato was known for being this really just man. He was a statesman. He resisted what he saw as the tyranny of Julius Caesar. Cato leads him through purgatory. Then finally, in the Paradiso, or the Paradise, he's led through by this Italian woman named Berenice. Who was the one that he loved in real life. Okay, so that's kind of roughly the structure there. Now, you're going, Steve, I want to read this. You sitting there smoking that bent brandy with some nice Peterson's tobacco in there. Now, I want to go out and read these. But you say, Steve, I don't read Italian. And there's a lot of translations out there. Which one do I go for? And that's really what I want to talk about in this video today. So the classic English translation since 1954 has been that of John Ciardi. C-I-A-R-D-I, John Ciardi. And just the standard, so many people have read it. I think it's what I first read. In fact, I'm positive of that. And then in 2002, came out a new translation. And I have told students, I've told other adults, you do not want any other English translation of Dante than the one I'm going to introduce you to in this video. The one you want is by Anthony Esolen. And I'm going to show all of them to you here very quickly, and then we're going to show you in more detail. There was the Inferno. Here's his edition of the Purgatorio. He calls it Purgatory. And then his edition of the Paradiso, or Paradise. Okay. So Anthony Esolen is a professor. He's been at multiple different universities. Right now, he's a distinguished professor of literature at Thales College. He is a social commentator. He's a social literary critic. He's written numerous books of his own. He's translated the Dante, obviously. He's translated the Roman poet Lucretius. He's translated St. Augustine, or St. Augustine's Confessions. And I will tell you, if you are a thinking person, Anytime you see Anthony Esselin's name on something, you read it. I don't care what else you're doing. I don't care if you're making dinner. You stop, you read it, okay? Anthony Esselin's stuff is good stuff. It's solid stuff, rooted in history, rooted in literature, rooted in the Christian faith. He's very open about his Catholicism, and that shapes very much who he is and what he does. So why is it I like these so much? Well, first of all, they're the Modern Library editions. Modern Library's been putting out great stuff for many, many years. And it has illustrations from the woodcuts. I'll see if we can find one here. Of course, when you're looking for something, you can't find it, can you? But from Gustave Doré, the famous illustrator of, well, can you believe it? I can't turn the page and find an example. Oh, here we go. Here we go. So, for example, and you may have seen this art at some point. Okay, so it's got the woodcut illustrations of Gustave Doré. It's got what I like. It's got the Italian on one side and Esselin's English on the other. And you say, well, I don't read Italian. What do I care? Okay. Maybe you don't. But maybe you want to check something out. Or maybe you're just curious, what is that in Italian? What does that actually look like? And you can see it on the facing page there. So I think that's nice. I think the translation itself is good. And I'm not going to go through the whole translator's preface. He starts off with the famous, he says, the Italians have a saying, traduttore, traditore, which basically means that everyone in my line of work is an errant traitor. The line is, that famous line, it suggests that whatever you do as a translator, you're going to be betraying the original in some way. You're going to have to leave some things out. You may have to put some things in that weren't there. If it were a one-to-one mapping, okay, then it would just be in Italian, right? It wouldn't be any different. It's like the comedian Stephen Wright once said, he says, I have a life-size map of the United States at home where 1 inch equals 1 inch. People ask me where I live. I tell them F8. Right? Because obviously, if you had a map that was to that kind of scale, it would just be the world. Right? So every translation is going to be off in some way. So what do? Well, Esselin, I think, does a marvelous job. Now, the thing about what a lot of people, translators have to wrestle with is that Dante wrote in what's called terza rima, a very particular metric, right, rhythm to the lines, and then the lines rhymed in a certain way. Basically, I'm looking at the Italian here, looking at basically an ABA arrangement. So you had triplets, three lines, ABA, then another set ABA, kind of going on a rhyme scheme like that. If you try to accomplish that in English, you're going to have to make a lot of changes. Okay, English is not a great rhyming language. This is why Milton didn't use rhyme when he wrote Paradise Lost. And a lot of people say, oh, you got to use rhyme, He says, why? He says the Greeks and Romans didn't use rhyme. And he thought that rhyme was no particular advantage to English poetry. Now, I have to confess, I really do like rhyme. I like Dryden's translation of the Aeneid, rhyming couplets. I absolutely love Alexander Pope's translation of the Iliad, which he did all by himself. The Odyssey, which went out under his name, he mostly did, but he also got help from a couple of other guys, a fellow named Mr. Fenton and another fellow named Mr. Broom. But anyway, those were all rhyming couplets, and I really do like that. But if you're going to try to do that, especially with the Dante, you're going to leave out stuff, you're going to have to change some stuff in order to get the rhyme, because English just isn't a great rhyming language. Certainly not the way Italian is. Italian ends with so many vowel sounds, and so it's great for rhyming. So Esalen doesn't try to do that. He does set it out in triplets. So it is poetry. I mean, if nothing else, you can look at the page and see, right? It has the look of poetry. Give you a little taste. This is the beginning of Canto 1, line 1. Midway upon the journey of our life, I found myself in a dark wilderness, for I had wandered from the straight and true. How hard a thing it is to tell about, that wilderness so savage, dense, and harsh. Even to think of it renews my fear. It is so bitter, death is hardly more. But to reveal the good that came to me, I shall relate other things I saw. So it rolls very well. The poetry, I think, is great. And there's a little clue there in why you need to read all of this. Because Dante says, to reveal the good that came to me, I shall relate the other things I saw. So you got to go through hell in order to get to heaven, right? You think about the Via Dolorosa. You think about the path that Christ walked, carrying the cross, the suffering of Calvary, in order to get to the resurrection, right? There's that great passage. I think it's by a Reverend Lockwood. I may be getting the name wrong. I'll check that out when I put the video together. But it's Friday, but Sunday's coming. Well, a lot of people read the Inferno and stop. Well, you missed the good stuff. Oh, there's some exciting stuff, but you missed the good stuff. You want to go on them and read the Purgatorio, and ultimately the beautiful and exquisite Paradiso. Okay? Now, all that's good stuff, but the real reason that I love these versions by Anthony Esalen is for the notes. Okay? Esalen is a scholar, and I love two things. I love two things about what he's done with his notes. First of all, the formatting. And different people are going to have different opinions about this. Okay? He doesn't put the notes on the page. He puts the notes at the end. All right? So, there we go. Where are we here? I have notes to Canto 3. All right, this is the end of the book. I like that because it doesn't distract you from reading. Now, maybe you want the notes on the page. I think it's helpful just to be able to read the thing, and then if you've got a question, go look it up in the notes. And here's where Esalen serves you, the reader. He gives you everything you need and nothing that you don't. His volume, his editions of Dante, to me, are the best of any kind of editions about anything I've read, because he gives you all the information that you need as a modern 21st century reader who may not be familiar with, Florentine politics and some of the things that Dante refers to, especially in the Inferno. He gives you what you need, but he doesn't give you a whole bunch of stuff that is really interesting to about 5 people on the planet, okay? Serious Dante scholars only, and quite frankly would just clog the notes and make you go, oh, good grief, I can't get through this. It's a seminar in a book, is what it is. And for the price, this is $10.95, I don't know if it's gone up, but for the price of $10.95, my friends, you couldn't do better than that. So, there it is. If you want to read Dante, if you want to read the Divine Comedy, first off, I encourage you to do it. Read the whole thing. All right? Read the whole thing. The Inferno, Purgatorio, Paradiso. And do so with the translation by Anthony Esalen. Talk to us a little bit. I want to throw some questions in here to you. Tell us, do you like epic poetry? Do you remember reading the Iliad, the Odyssey, the Aeneid, Paradise Lost, Gilgamesh, Beowulf, The Rape of the Lock, Dante? Do you remember reading any of that kind of stuff in school? Have you ever read any of that kind of stuff on your own, just for your personal pleasure? Does that stuff completely put you off? Does this perhaps light a spark that you might want to go check it out now. Folks, as Malcolm Guite likes to say, I do these little things in order at last to do nothing. Or as I like to say in Latin, parva ago ut tandem, nihil agam. Have a wonderful day.